Juan, Leonard, Emma, and Sian, thank you so much for being here for the Producers Roundtable for the Plus 65 film project. We're very grateful that you made your time because I know that producers, really, you guys are like walking clocks, your machines, right? Every minute is tuck, 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 tuck. So today I want to like dispel any misconceptions and I want people to have a good understanding of exactly what it is that producers do. All of you have assumed like different roles, meaning like even as producers. Maybe I want to start with Juan. Maybe tell us what an associate producer does.
I was an associate producer for some films. I would say that an associate producer has a certain limited stakeholdership of the film, but much less responsibility as compared to the main producer. So usually if you're an associate producer, you will be supporting in certain minor tasks, but you won't be as responsible in terms of authority and the weight of the film. So yeah, you are less responsible for the film, but still related to the film. That's why you're called an associate producer. You're associated, but you're not really under the gun.
Not the one driving it.
Yeah, you're not the one driving it exactly.
Okay.
So sometimes that's a good
So
position.
it's not
to
so
be.
much your head on the chopping board, lah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, but you do
See,
support.
yeah, Sian, I mean, I know you had like an amazing start. You were an assistant producer for Tristan on Popeye.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the role of an assistant producer?
I think just assisting with whatever the producers need, like filling in the gaps and stuff like that, and really just helping wherever we can.
Yeah.
And that's really how I started producing.
And you had like a whole elephant involved in that, right? I mean, that must have been so much more difficult for all the producers involved in the
I
movie.
mean, it was just quite an interesting experience because I was in Thailand for 6 months for that, and elephant was there. There needs to be training for the elephant, and we had to bring the elephant across the country, and it was kind of fascinating. And we were shooting at I think one of the hottest summer in Thailand.
I was gonna ask.
And it was quite intense. But I would say the elephant is not the most difficult part. People are always the most challenging part of producing. Coordinating
Are you
a
kidding?
crew.
They were-
I'm hearing a lot.
Really.
I
People
wanna-
are the most
we
difficult.
are gonna
Yeah,
touch
yeah.
on
Totally,
that.
man. Totally.
Emma,
Yes.
you are the Adaptation Queen. You've been executive producer, line producer, series producer. Maybe just tell us what those roles, what those roles entail.
I think essentially a producer is a producer.
Mm,
We all take on the responsibility, whether we are assisting or whether we are line producing. Ultimately, the goal is to keep within the budgets, to keep the actors happy, the animals cool,
Yeah.
and I mean, to make sure we wrap on time. I think essentially and to be answerable for, to our EPs. And I think most importantly, to ensure that we produce quality.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing to me, at least. It's that whatever I choose to work on, it has to be of quality.
The difference between executive producer and series producer and production manager, can you just give me what distinguishes one from the other?
Yeah, so executive producer, I think what we do is we come up with a concept.
Okay.
We come up with the story idea, and then we pitch it to the people who might be interested to finance the film, which is then handed on to a producer, which is responsible with the money given to create and to bring it to screen.
Okay.
And with production management, I think it's very simple, which is to make sure that you're on set every day, to make you're answerable to the producer. You keep within the budgets given by the producer. You are responsible to report back to the producer if there is a possibility of an overrun, to make sure that everybody's kept on time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also welfare, keeping the crew happy, very, very important, keeping the crew happy, keeping the actors happy, and of course, keeping the animals happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Leonard, you were
Yeah.
supervising producer also when you were at J-Team. That's interesting. I've never heard of a supervising producer.
The definition might varies from production to production,
Okay.
as well as from TV and movie and film industry. I mean, a supervising producer is sort of like overall in charge. executive producers are basically in a feature film format is actually the investors. So investors that come up with the money, we give them the title executive producers. So you see like my films have like 10, 15 executive producers.
Okay.
Yeah, supervising producers, maybe one or two, me and another person.
So as
Yeah.
long as I'm responsible for funding a movie, I immediately become
Yeah,
an
if you
executive
come up with
producer.
the money,
Okay.
you can be my next film executive producer.
I hope I get that.
That is a producer.
I have a few
Very
projects.
fast.
Pitching, already pitching.
Yeah, I have,
You know what?
I have a few projects
In
you know,
development.
on the slate. Yeah, going for general release. You know, if you're interested, tell me. Yeah, so you know the supervising producers, in my sense,
Yeah.
we take care of from inception all the way to release.
Mm,
Yeah, so some producers like line producers,
yeah.
like what Emma said, you know, and what Juan said, and what Seren said, you know, they come in and they execute. So those are line producers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we take care of the story. So depends on whether is it a producer-driven project or director-driven project.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes the director-driven project, the producer is hired, to actually take care of the whole thing and work together with the director to do the project together. Yeah, if it's a producer-driven, the director might be hired instead, and then the story might be from the producer as well, and not from the director, and given to the director to sort of like tweak it, you know, because I believe in the director and his style and in his vision, so he will tweak. But the story structure and maybe the first draft or the script is already there.
Okay.
Yeah. So on top of that, you know, we follow all the way to from post-production as well. We are overall in charge of post-production, release as well. You know, the promotion, marketing of the film, and then the different countries dealing with the sales agent as well. So supervising producer is the whole thing, you know,
Okay.
from beginning until the end. Yeah. Then after that, next project. You know, sometimes we handle a few projects at the same time.
So in definition, right, all of you like simplified it, but I think there's so much more to the roles that you just sort of talked
It's a
about.
case by case basis.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, the scope of your film
Correct.
also dictates what kind of hierarchy would you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for Leonard's films,
Yeah.
because they are all very much larger scale,
Mm.
so they're more
Not
bosses.
as large as hers.
You know, maybe for Seren's films,
Yeah, more
there's certain-
international though.
Yeah, international
Depends on the
systems.
country you deal with too. Sometimes the
Alright.
terms change. So with every project, it always there's some flexibility to what
Yeah.
the term producer means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
TV, the budget's a lot lesser. So you don't have the supervising producer and the line producer.
So you kind of like have to take out a few of the middlemen because you've got less budget.
We have less budget.
Yeah.
So with that, with TV, I mean, with film is very, very different. So like what Leonard and John say, it's very, very true because every project is very, very different. You know, our roles and responsibility change within each project.
Some is like I'm as an executive producer for like for example, King of Hawkers. I'm executive producer, so I come with the money lah. Yeah, so I involve in a little bit in terms of distribution because they don't have the context for distribution, so I do distribution. And then for the next film as well, I'm executive producer. So you know, in terms of driving the project, I'm not so much. Yeah, but if you are a supervising producer or the producer, you know, you really drive the project.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, from everything you drive it. Yeah.
So all of you took different routes to get here because I did read your bios, right? And what I want to know is, because for me, what I keep hearing is if you want to become a producer, you have to absolutely start off as a runner. You got to do a million things behind, you know, the scenes, and then they'll start promoting you, blah, blah, blah. And I know that's not the case. You know what I mean? So can I just like have each of you tell me like how you ended up becoming a producer? Like
Okay.
for the first time it happened, because I know some of you took breaks and then came back.
10 years, 10 years.
most experience.
Exactly, yes.
How did you end up becoming a producer, John?
I first started off kind of like doing a lot of production work, production crew, gaffer, cameraman.
Yes.
Then I realized that, I'm actually not very good at these things because people only calling me if other people are not free.
Okay.
But I also like telling stories, and I worked for a finance company before. So I read scripts and I told myself, okay, somebody has to kind of like game up lah and produce. So it was quite interesting because my first foray was kind of like I guess you can say battle promotion, because we shot a film that halfway through the producer had something else to do, so he left the project. So I was the production manager. So it was like, oh, should we continue the film or should we just stop shooting? So I think myself and the filmmakers were saying, I mean, since we have started, so let's just finish it lah. So it was a field promotion lah. So I was production manager, then eventually I kind of stepped up to produce the film lah. Then from there, once I got the hang of it, I think I felt that this was something that I can do, I want to do. Then from there, we worked on other stuff, and then, I guess the rest is history lah. I'm still stuck as a producer.
Yeah. And, like right time, right place, seizing the opportunity as well,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think in a lot of times, filmmakers are producers themselves. If you want to tell a story, if you want to bring in people to have a team to tell a story, you are naturally a producer. Then, because the film is so big, then you start to split your roles. Then you'll have your director, writer, cameraman, and so forth.
Right.
So I think in a way, a lot of the spirit of producing is in every creator lah, in that sense. Yeah.
I do agree with you, actually. As a writer, I feel the same way. Yeah. Leonard, we're going to go with engineering background and then and then to highest grossing Singaporean film. Let's see, how did that happen?
Well, it's quite a long journey, actually.
Yeah.
I started as a civil engineer. you know.
Yeah.
So I'm not educated in film at all. I didn't go to film school. I didn't graduate from Ngee or one of the film schools. I didn't. So everything I learned is actually on the job.
Yeah.
So I was a civil engineer for about 5 years, working in the oil and gas industry. So there are some tanks in Jurong Island. I think it's still standing. It's still standing. Was designed and built by me. Some of the wafer fabs, are designed. Certain systems are designed by me. Yeah, so I had that kind of background. But since university, I've always been interested in film. But back then it was a bit hard to get into film. There was only Ngee I think, right?
Yeah, at that time.
Yeah, at that time, the other polys or universities, they don't offer like media courses like NUS now or, NTU. So the only film school is really at Ngee I. And I must, go through 4 years again. Was it 4 years?
3 years.
3 years advanced diploma, after I've done my bachelor in civil engineering. And I worked 5 years already, so I don't want to go back to that. And I was like 30 years old, so
Still young.
I mean, okay, still young, but 30, and if I wanted to do a switch back then, there's no turning back. So it's either I continue as an engineer,
Yeah.
and then doing the same thing, for the rest of my life, or I radically change. So start from zero again. So I decided to actually start from zero. And I attended a short course, organized by Juan. It's a 16 mm.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so
did I.
Yeah, the first batch, right?
Where was I when that course was going on?
I was fourth batch.
Fourth batch. Yeah. So
What was this course called?
What's it called?
16mm.
Kodak 16
Kodak 16mm filmmaking course.
Yes.
16 weeks.
But before going to that, I already have a lot of interest. So I read up a lot, and I read like the trade magazines, American cinematographer, filmmaker, so on and so forth. Yeah, so already have some knowledge, but just not the practical part of it. And with knowledge and practical is actually very different. Yeah, so I started with that. And then he said he was doing Perth.
Yeah.
He was starting Perth. Yeah, that was back in
2001.
2001.
Oh, no, sorry, 2002, 03.
Yeah, so 2002, 03. So he said, hey, Leonard, I got a position called script supervisor.
I was just
script
going to ask,
supervisor
like,
and
how did you end
continuity.
up on Perth?
Yeah, then I said, then he said, you want to, do or not?
Jump on board.
Yeah. Then I said, I know nothing about it. Then he showed me a book.
Of course.
He showed me a book, and I'm supposed to read the book and familiarize myself, Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah, that was it.
You see, again, right? There's so much to do with like timing and where you were and who you knew and then how it all
A lot of kismet.
unfolded. A
Yeah.
lot of that.
Yeah. So started zero from there, learn everything. I had a very good first AD, one of the best in the industry, Kim Lim. She's with advertising now, but she's as demure as Cern, but a fury character. She shout on the set.
Chili padi,
Yeah, really. Nobody, everybody's scared. Everybody's scared.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had a very good teacher. You know, of course, she doesn't, hold hand and
Yeah.
and if there's anything I need or not sure, I can always go to her. Yeah, but she expect you to,
Like
unless
not
it's like the sky is falling or you make a huge mistake, then you come and look for me, and we try to solve the problem together. Otherwise, you are on your own. People will come to you. So I have to learn the trick.
Yeah, it's like sink or swim, but don't sink.
Yeah.
I mean? Like that's
If really, you can't really, right? You are
Yeah.
swimming for 10 km, right? I'll throw you a life vest. After you have swam for so long.
Right.
Yeah. So it started from there. Then I struggled in the industry. I made my debut film in 2006 as well.
206.
high cost of living.
Yeah, so I directed a film. It didn't do well. Maybe the climate back then was tough as well.
It didn't do well.
Yeah.
You won, right?
I
Best
won.
feature film. for
Yeah,
the
I mean,
9th
best
International.
feature, but it's not the main festival. And the festival circuit is as complicated as the commercial circuit.
Okay.
Totally different set of
Yeah.
rules. I think Susan can talk more about it.
Right.
Yeah,
But
because
I
she has a lot of
I
experience.
do want to hear from Sin
Yeah.
because I realized that you had probably the most traditional route into because you
yeah.
started with Neon
Yes.
and your first internship was with Fran Bourgeois.
Yes. I mean, I chanced upon film because, like, when I was 12, they had a nationwide competition, and
Yeah.
for some reason, I was selected to be part of it, and I was appointed the role of a producer actually.
Okay.
So it's a curse that never left me, but I love it in equal measure. So then I went to Neon for the first time, and they were giving out these keychains in a slate, and I knew that I wanted to be part of like this team that were behind like moving images. And so that was how I ended up in Neon. So I studied in Neon. I met Juan. I met Fran. I did my first internship where Leonard was there, and it was quite an internship because we were in the forest
Yeah.
for such a long time. It was like we were in the forest. We basically lived in the forest for like a
Yeah,
month or two.
It's a lost film, actually.
Yeah. It was quite a beautiful experience, and then I took a break. I did philosophy in NUS,
Yeah.
and then I returned because like Wei Jie and Anthony was producing Popeye, invited me to be an assistant producer on that project.
Right.
And
Would you
and-
say the rest is history?
yeah, I think so because I think I had learned a lot from that set, and it was quite a beautiful experience. And I think like I was working with like some really cool producers who taught me a lot, and I think like their belief in film and their own team was something that stayed with me for a long time, and that was really how I started. Yeah.
So you caught that like really early, all that inspiration. I mean, even though you had your, you went away for a while, you came back.
Yeah, I think somehow producing, I think ending up in producing it's in some ways fate or maybe luck.
It's
or
starting to sound
curse.
like it, with this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Emma, print editorial, casting director, now
Yeah.
award-winning producer. Tell us about your start, your official start.
My start is actually very similar to Leonard's start, and I think that's kind of a time where I met Leonard as well. Yeah, but not 2001, a lot later than that, right? You can do your math. He was 30 at
Oh,
that
she was
time.
very beautiful. Back then and now.
She was.
I know what?
Not was, sorry. Is.
Thank you.
And this one must cut away.
Yeah. Please, no, you can keep it.
I go to Leonard saying she is very beautiful.
Yeah.
She is
Yeah,
still
thank you.
fantastic looking.
Oh, yeah,
Look
thank
at her,
you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
but no, seriously.
Yeah.
So actually very similar to Leonard's journey as well. I came from the corporate world.
Yeah.
I was a brand manager for an optical company for close to 10 years.
Mm.
And what happened was I was very much in charge of the advertising and the brand management of the products. So I have a very good friend, and he owned a restaurant at that time. And he said, "Hey, come in and do a little bit of my branding and advertising and help me with the point of sales materials." And he's a good friend, can't say no. I said, "Okay, I'll come in."
Yeah.
And he introduced me to the photographer, Nicholas Leong. And Nicholas said, "Hey, you know what? I'm looking for a producer, print producer." I was like, "Okay, I don't even know what a print producer is, but sure, So I started with casting. So I was casting a lot for him. And then I moved on to TV commercials. So from print, and then moved on to TV commercials. I worked a lot at that time with Shooting Gallery. So there was this time where a lot of the commercials that were coming out of shooting there, I did a lot of the casting for it. And one day I got a call, and it was this company that we worked at together, and they said, hey, we're doing this TV series, which Kim was also the AD on the series.
Which series was it?
Rouge.
Oh, Rouge.
Rouge.
Yes,
Rouge.
yes,
Cheek,
Rouge.
cheek.
Cheek,
Yeah,
yes,
cheek,
yes,
yeah.
cheek. And they said, oh, we need a casting director for that one. I'm like, okay, sure, I can do that. And then and they said, oh, it's only going to be for like 3 to 6 months. And I'm like, okay, I can do 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And then I ended up staying with them for 8 years. But it was primarily to not do casting for them, not do producing for them, but in terms of, I was doing content distribution
Okay.
and the marketing of their 6 TV channels that they had at that time with Mio TV. So actually producing was only in the beginning when I was working on print ads and TVCs. And then subsequently after that, it was very business focused. And then I left for 10 years.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then you came back. I do want to
Yes.
ask, right?
How did I come back?
How and also was that very challenging for you?
Well, I got a call out of the blue and said, hey, you know what? We're doing this TV series and I think you'll be perfect as a producer for this series.
And this is after how long? How
10
many
years.
Wow.
Yeah, 10 years. And I said, I don't think so. The only people I think are still in the industry and who I know are Juan and Leonard. Like, I don't think so. The landscape has changed so much and media is constantly changing, I said, I'm just not relevant anymore. I don't think so. Being older and thinking to myself, I just don't have the energy for this, right?
Right.
And they said, no, come in and sit down and just talk.
Yeah.
I said, okay, just talk only, right? Talk only. So I went for coffee with the EP and the director. And then they said, okay, here this is. It's the teenage textbook, the series. And I went like, how do you even say no to that?
Right.
Because the people that I used to work
Yeah.
for, Mega Media, Jonathan
Teenage
Foo,
textbook, one circle goes back around.
it's a whole circle because it was the first film that I distributed. Yeah, because I was in content distribution,
Yes.
right?
So
it's
you
the
have that
first
experience.
local film that I distributed. So it's very close to my heart, right? And I worked with the EP. I'm very fond with,
And you love the book, right?
and I love the book. I love
Yeah.
Adrian, I couldn't say no. I was like, oh my goodness, how do I say no to something
Right.
like this? But I said, okay, you know what? Wait. So I called up Jonathan and I said, hey, John, they want to reboot this into a series. So how? Then he's like, okay. And they want me to produce it. So how? Then he's like, and he was very, very sweet. He said to me, if there's anyone that I want to produce the series, then I really hope it be you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my. And then he said, anything you want.
Yeah.
You want the music soundtrack, you want the behind the scenes, you want anything, just call me. I'm here for you.
Is that usually the freedom that the producer is given when it comes to a production?
I think for this production,
It
because
just happened to be the relationships.
I think with this production, because August Pictures, the production company that I worked for on Teenage Textbook, they do a lot of Mandarin series, and this is their first English series.
Okay.
So I think it was really like, okay, you know what? We're handing this over to you because it is,
Okay.
something that you may have experience with in terms of English script.
Yeah.
And the EP that I worked with, Wai Tong, he just very, very trusting. He allowed me to make all the decisions from the scripts. I worked with scripts, script writers, script editor. COVID to me was my busiest time. Everyone was just,
Interesting.
it was just so busy for me. We were doing casting, we were watching tapes, 13 hours of casting tapes. We were writing scripts, 13 episodes of scripts as well,
Yeah.
even down to the music. And although Jonathan said, you have all the original music given to you, we decided, like, you know what? We want to introduce more music that might be more relevant to the teenagers of now. But I'm no teenager, right? So I said, okay, I called up people in the music industry, and they, people, managers of like BRB and, and all that. And they said, you know what, Emma, we're here for you. Thank you so much for like introducing our local artists. Because I think musicians at that time, especially during the COVID time, they were very vulnerable.
Yes.
They were losing the income. They were very, very vulnerable. And to them,
They
it's
lost
like,
all their live performance gigs, right?
exactly. And at that time, when someone comes in or a production comes in and says, we want to promote local music, it was somewhat of a lifeline,
Yeah.
And I think all of us at the table would have done exactly the same thing. We would have been very excited to be able to help not just our industry, but, industries that were suffering during the period of COVID.
Correct. And what I love seeing here, right, is that there's so much camaraderie, and there's so much of support that goes on within the industry that you don't really get to see, until these conversations are had and you go like, oh yeah, you would jump in for you and you would try and help you and, all of these things. So, and the thing about producers, right, with my lack of knowledge, I was always like, oh, the producer is the money person. The producer is there to ensure that the budget is, like in check. The producer might stifle the creativity of the project. And you know what I mean? But from what I'm hearing, not really, right? You guys are the pulse, you're the heartbeat, your development to distribution, you're the moms, you're nurturing, you're negotiating, you're troubleshooting. There's so much about your job that we don't really know about. I'm listening to you and everything that you've all just said, right? There was so much of heart that goes into the work that you do. I want to talk about the emotional aspect of, like, now that you are all four producers sitting in front of me, right? How much of like emotion like goes into the work that you are producing? Because really we're seeing you as like, oh, the person who's looking at the schedule and going, this person better show up, this better be there when I arrive, don't give me attitude, okay, no, not 1 minute overtime, you're gonna cost us. So maybe like tell me about like, the projects that you've worked on, the films that you've worked on, that, it was all hard, it was, I'm sure it's all of it, but
Can I just say something about this, right?
Yeah.
I think basically when the reason why you're feeling this energy between us, right,
Yes.
is because being a producer is actually a very painful role. We are painkillers, basically. And I think sitting here, we all can feel each other's pain as being producers. Seriously, it's like,
but I can feel your pain sitting here
Yeah,
as
so-
well.
Pain vibe.
the pain vibe. So it's like when
And passion.
and passion, but
Yeah.
but pain. So
Yeah, if there's no passion, we wouldn't be doing this for like
Exactly.
20, 30 years.
So there is so
Exactly,
much
yes.
passion, right, coming out of everything that you've done. And I mean, come on, OG, right? Trailblazer, Adaptation Queen, like then bilingual, and then for you, like highest grossing, and you spent all those years with J-Team. There's so much of passion, and I'm sure so much of pain that goes into the job, right? So what are like some of the skill sets that you really have to kind of like master for longevity, maybe? I mean, Sian, I know that you like fresh out of uni 2018, and then you started Momo, I think, with your partner
Yeah.
Chris, and then 3 years later Momo gets acquired by Beach House. I mean, it's
Yeah, so I was working with Anthony, Giraffe Pictures, for a while first before I started Momo. And
Yeah.
it was really because I think at the time, like the Southeast Asian scene was coming out and there were so many great stories. And I saw a lot of short films and talented directors that I really wanted to support. I think there were not many producers in some of the region, and we really wanted to support like
Yeah.
these people. And that was really how it started growing. And we sold some of our stakes to Beach House, and it was a decision that was made because I was thinking of like how do I want to grow as a producer, and how do I want my company to grow, and what kind of ambition I want to have next. And I think like how that collaboration happened was because like we really wanted to grow in terms of like the type of projects we're doing, the scale of the projects that we're doing, and to really, I think, bring the projects out from, I think, just the Southeast Asian region to a wider sort of network.
and working with Anthony. Just tell me a little bit.
Yeah,
of what-
I end up in the producing role really because Anthony was making Wet Season at the time, and one of the delegate producers couldn't produce anymore, and the job really just landed on my lap. And in I think similar to many of the
Yeah.
stories that we hear, I think that was really how I ended up in my first producing role. It was not supposed to be quicker than that, but
What a great
promotion.
first producing
Yeah.
role, right? To end up in,
yeah,
you know,
so it
Anthony
was
Chen in Red Season.
it was we shot mostly in Singapore and also part of it in Malaysia, and it had a great festival run, but we were also hit by the pandemic somewhere later on during its release.
And I want to ask, right, from the producing aspect of it, I mean, the rain alone must have been so painful. I mean, how does that work for a producer? Like, what happens? Like, people get wet and you're like, okay, no, we didn't get that take, so let's dry everyone up and go again. I mean,
it was a lot of that, and it was
Oh
a lot
my
of like water
goodness.
and water that we have to buy, and
Yeah.
different types of rain that we have to create, because Anthony is a really specific director, and I think like he really wanted to create an atmosphere, and with every different scene or part of the movie, the type of rain is different. The amount of I guess like the thinness of the rain, how it falls, whether it's a storm or it's a light rain. So we had
Yeah.
to create machineries that can support that, and it was kind of it was interesting for me. Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go, right? That's a lot of pain involved, a lot of passion also, because you're dealing with all that water. And then I have to ask, you know, I really enjoyed the redemption of Ken Chow. Okay, Our Boys to Men too. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
But I'm watching the movie and thinking, oh my God, I would not want to be the producer of this film. You know, like you've got like Tekong, you've got tons of young men, you know, you've got weapons and uniforms and just little things like the helmet, the mattresses, the scene with the toilets. And tell us just, you know, like how much of heart and passion and pain was involved.
It was a very interesting project. Because working with Jack is always interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, it started out from MINDEF actually approaching Jack, saying that, hey, we have, they did a documentary, I think. What's it called?
Every Singaporean
Every
son.
Singaporean son. Yeah. So they did a documentary. They said, hey, we have all the footage, you know, we edited it, but you can have the footage and then sort of like do a feature documentary. So Jack re-proposed something else. Say, hey, documentary commercially very difficult. Yeah. I mean, he's a commercial director. So yeah, why don't we do a military team film? And it's been sometime since Army days, right? I think
love.
yeah, so it's been some time since Army days. So yeah, why don't we update, you know, for something that's modern? So that's how the project started. It was supposed to be one film. Yeah.
And the next Fast and Furious of Singapore.
Yeah, so it was supposed to be one film, but you know, being a commercial film, there were commercial considerations. And we felt that after like we shot for we shot for 3 months. Yeah, there was tons of footage. So we decided actually the story is good enough and big enough for a two-parter. And we went into sort of like a 1 week of reshoot. Actually two reshoots. Both like 1 week and then on 3 and 4 days, something like that, to make the story fuller so that it can be actually two separate films. And it went on to be the third highest grossing. Our Boys to Men 1 is the third highest grossing. Our Boys to Men 3 is the second. Our Boys to Men 2 is the highest.
It's the highest.
Yeah, so commercially it was very, very, very successful. And it's sort of like, because it's national service, you know, and it was actually very modern and talks to people. So, I mean, the girls and the mothers, they also want to see the film because they don't know their sons or boyfriends, what they're experiencing. And then I think we got that vibe actually quite well in terms of, you know, there are all the jokers inside. And there are the, you know, the kings and whatever. So it's also, it's very down to earth, very relatable, and sort of like Singlish film as well. If you notice it, 80% is actually English, Singlish. 20% is like Hokkien and whatever. And it actually transcends. Everybody relates to it. Yeah. So but you were right, you know.
The jungle.
Yeah, not only that, you know, Our Boys to Men 1, there was that 10-minute war scene there. Yeah, so it's sort of like we were shooting halfway and then Jack had the idea, hey, why don't we do a war scene?
That's convenient.
Yeah, so it came from there. And the people that coming out with the money, MN2, and other investors, they went for it. So we pumped in some more money and then we got to make a sort of like a war scene. Yeah, Shandong Wei. We closed Shandong Wei for like 3 days to shoot the Shandong Wei war scene. Then all the HDB, and then the fighter. I mean, we had a lot of support from MINDEF. They were really, really behind the project. So that's how we actually had, we were able to go into Tekong. We had the tanks. We had the fighter planes as well. All the B shots, that makes it really realistic for the war scene. Yeah.
So that was like a first of its kind, right, for a movie
Yeah.
in Singapore,
Yeah.
A Boys to Men. Totally relatable. I mean,
Yes.
like I'm female, and I
Yeah.
watched it. I enjoyed it
Yeah.
thoroughly.
Yeah.
Juan Foo, I know you are the format guy, and I know that
Format guy.
you're the HD digital, and you were a
Film.
producer of one of the first HD format films. I think was that correct?
That's Return to Pontianak.
Yes.
And then
So
Dirty
that's
Laundry.
like a first for you.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Definitely,
everyone-
it was fun. I think we were trying to break the norm because in those days when you wanted to make a film, it had to be shot on film. And I think there was a lot of expenses, processing the film, transferring the film, cutting and finishing the film, which was kind of like everything in that ecosystem was available in Singapore. It was very expensive. And I think around that time, there was a film called Blair Witch Project,
Scared all of us.
which again proved, a certain level of genre entertainment could be done for a lower cost. So Return to Pontianak got its inspiration from that. So we shot Return to Pontianak on mini DV, and then we actually transferred it onto 35mm film for release, which was pretty crazy. Maybe it's inherent in the fact that as a producer, you want to find ways to make it cost effective, but not let it affect so-called the tone and the production quality. So we did a lot of experiments for that. We tried to kind of like measure up to how it would look and feel. But I think the convenience of it was that it was a horror film. So we could get away with a lot of things. Yeah, that's really kind of a bit of playing with formats. I did Dirty Laundry also, which was kind of like a shot on HD. They tried to think of a way to actually release it in the cinemas, because that time they had something called e-cinema, whereby you didn't go through transferring of, this is before DCP lah. So that was also considered. Perth also was in a similar vein, because Perth, we went back to film because of the look again, 16mm film, but eventually we had to also do a 35mm print. I think playing with formats is not necessarily something that I own lah. But it's just, what does it need? Do you need this kind of scale or technology to, do your production quality? If so, let's try it. But can we do it cheaper, faster? Where we can reallocate resources or something else. It's a producer's kind of like a calling. What can be the most affordable way to attain our best kind of
Talking about this
interest.
switch to from film to digital.
Yeah.
It's interesting because directors started to have a lot of freedom in terms of long takes. Then they really went for really like, no holds bar kind of.
True, yeah. Because of digital, they could sustain a long take. Yeah.
Because 16mm, the longest reel is like 10 minutes.
10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes.
So 10 minutes cut, you have
Got
to
to
change the
change
reel.
the weekend.
The film.
Okay.
So imagine,
Yeah.
the actors were, it's a long take, it's like a
Right.
15 minutes
Yeah.
take. It's not possible. With
Yeah.
35mm is even
Worse,
shorter.
yeah.
I think it's 5 minutes, 6 minutes
Something like, yeah.
maximum.
Okay.
Yeah. So digital allowed a lot
Allowed
of freedom
the
for
freedom,
the directors.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
But
That's
also,
a very good point.
yeah, but also the discipline in terms of, getting it right in the first 2 or 3 takes is sort of like not there anymore. Yeah, they will go and experiment. Hey, it's digital. We can just roll. Yeah.
So you guys are your own versions of chefs, playing with the ingredients to get the perfect meal and the right recipe. How do we get Singaporeans to be more supportive of Singaporean content? Because that is and has been a concern for a while. And I was like asking Sian earlier, does this mean that we have to keep partnering up with, an international production company, like someone from Indonesia or Korea, or, is that now like what we have to do? Is that the path all Singaporean filmmakers have to take, the Ajuma path, or, Popeye, or?
I mean, I think Leonard says he don't think so, and I think I agree. I think a lot of like our other industries like fashion and products that were made out of Singapore, and maybe like a decade ago, like nobody cared too much about them either. And I think like the quality of it, along with like the craft of the director, I think as we start honing it, I feel like it will naturally pick up because like these are stories that are relatable, and I think that Singapore. Beyond our own stories, we are also quite international. I think we're in quite a good position as a East Midwest of like hub to make stories that can resonate. I think to Singaporeans and also a little bit beyond that.
And you're talking about with Singaporean cast, with Singaporean crew. You know what I mean? We still have the
I'd like to add on a little
Yeah.
bit to this because of my experience in content distribution,
Yes.
basically, and in terms of co-productions, whether it's film or whether it's basically TV, right? We want it to travel as far and as wide as possible. But when it comes to distribution and, selling it, it's quite difficult because everyone else in the world is making content, Why would they want to pick yours? Why would they want to promote yours? And that's where this whole co-production, is a good model because with co-production, you're guaranteed, that you will have telecasts in these countries.
because it won't be enough because our population is a little bit too small.
No, it's more like if we work with the Koreans, then there's a
Yes.
likely chance of the Koreans having that film, that TV series in their country. That's a guaranteed, basically, especially if we work with a key talent or a key crew. That's a guarantee in terms of eyeballs with co-productions.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's purely just local, it's like keep fingers crossed that what we are trying to say has an international appeal.
Like our Boys to Men.
Like a
Right.
Boys to Men,
Yeah.
for example.
So,
Yeah.
it was done. So maybe it can be done again. However, like you mentioned, you're going to have the other country and their audience also invested in the film, watching the film, wanting to know what the film is about,
yeah.
right? I think like you were all involved in co-productions,
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
I want to ask you about Circle Line. That was
The crazy project.
okay. We can touch on like the
Sure,
projects
sure.
that were a little bit more challenging than the others, right?
Yeah.
Circle Line, I think was shot in Malaysia. The studio was in Malaysia.
Yep, yep.
FoundFilms, MM2, and all. So what was your experience like the whole Singapore and
I mean, if you're talking about production quality,
yeah.
I think that is actually something that we all want to ring through because in the end, you make a movie so that people want to watch.
Okay.
And I mean, coming back to Circle Line was a very ambitious project, but I think a lot of times the team felt that it was something that we could make an impact. And to lay out certain introductions to the fact that we can actually make a mainstream film in Singapore. Obviously with our partners and everything. But I think it was a very ambitious project. No regrets doing it. I mean, it cost a lot of sacrifices, etc. But it really proved that we could do something out of the ordinary, aside from the art house fanfare,
Yeah.
to make people think and be inspired. Apart from the so-called commercial comedies that we're very used to, this is something that's a bit different.
Our first creature
Yeah.
feature, right?
Yeah, it's kind of
Circle
like the first monster creature feature, doing very well on Netflix. So I think it's really down to what producers perceive as production quality. Again, I kind of lost my thought, but like what Emma you mentioned, it's really about selling something that people feel it's worth their time.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that is production quality, be it storytelling, be it cinematography, editing, sound, and these are the things that actually people are very aware of now. And I think it's the producer that really has to manage all these things, which is why coming back to formatting, making sure we get the most out of our money, it all ties down to what is the production quality that we can put together for this film so that it can be actually worthy of people's time to watch and pay money,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So Circle Line, you mentioned more than once. You used the word ambitious.
Oh, it's crazy.
Because?
Because it's the first Singapore film to rely on so much visual effects.
Okay.
It's the first Singapore film to try to make a film at a higher standard, meaning in terms of the preparation, the development phase, the post-production.
Yeah.
It was also not really the first, but it was also a film that I wanted to test waters with the streamers, and good that Netflix is on board, and yeah, just do a commercially acceptable, entertaining film. Yeah, and of course, we met up with a bigger, ambitious monster called COVID,
Yeah.
but we had to bear the brunt. But I think all in all, yeah, it has that certain level of daring do, I would say. And I mean, kudos again to the team, that backed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a bit crazy, lah. But we proved the point, lah. I mean, if you look at the film, I think it, aside from, some of the usual things that we always fall short of, right?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of stands the test of time, the kind of quality, the kind of finishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like in 2023, we're talking about like visual effects and all. Now,
Yeah, but we finished shooting it in 2018 and 2019, and we were stalled for release
okay.
for 3 years. Yeah, yeah. So Circle Line has its own pains. I used to joke, it's going around in circles.
That's actually
Yeah.
quite true.
So the bio is, oh, how's Circle Line? Oh, yeah, it's going around in circles.
So let's look at let's look at the difference, right? We go way back. Hainan chicken rice.
Hainan,
Oh,
that's
Yes.
John's
Oh yeah,
film as
you
well.
too. Okay, Hainan
Yes.
chicken rice.
it was a co-production between Singapore and Hong Kong.
Okay, yeah.
First
So tell
co-production.
us that the whole
Yeah.
different. Now you've gone through that evolution, right? I should have started with Hainan chicken rice,
Oh.
but we were on the topic of like HD formats and all that. How much of how was that compared to?
It was an interesting collaboration.
And the names involved, oh my god! I was like, what? Maggie Q, Melanie
but before she was
Laurent?
famous, lah.
But still,
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
Yeah, Melanie before she
Martin
did.
Yan, right?
Inglourious Basterds.
Yeah, before she did Inglourious Basterds. Yeah,
She's
Martin
larger
Yan,
than life
Sylvia
now.
Chang. Yeah.
So how much has changed?
In terms of co-productions.
Yes.
I think co-productions have actually changed a lot.
Why so?
Because right now there's a certain level of, I guess, reverence to Singapore producers.
Okay.
Because we can actually bring in money from our government. Not that Hainan Chicken Rice didn't have Singapore funding, but it was much tougher to justify that because it was the first one. And literally the producing team, which is from Hong Kong and Singapore, had to kind of like introduce this idea of co-production. What does it involve? What does it mean? In terms of packaging, in terms of really distribution.
So was that like one of the first few Singaporean films?
It could
that-
easily be the first co-production Singapore
Okay.
has ever had in those days, but it's not really a recognized co-production in the, I guess, soft money definition. Because right now the co-production definitions are very much government linked, right? But when we did it in Hainan Chicken Rice, it was Singapore government, Singapore investor, Hong Kong talent, and Hong Kong private investor. So there wasn't any Hong Kong government funding, but it was definitely a co-production because we had distribution deals both ends.
Yeah.
But nowadays co-production would be basically soft money from various countries. Soft money meaning government funding from delegate countries for the money.
We have to absolutely touch on funding.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Because I know we have ATF, Singapore Film Commission. Thank you so much. We've got the Momo distribution fund as well, right? But is there enough funding? I mean, which one of you wants to take this question? It's a little bit
There
sensitive.
is never enough.
There is never enough. So we've
There's
got
never enough,
IMD.
yeah.
We want to start with a number like, okay, Singapore, never enough is 0 and enough is 100. We are at number...
You can't really rate it
Yeah,
like
you
that.
can't. It's very difficult because we have so many good stories, that are ready to be
Yeah.
made, right?
And also our ambitions are
Yeah.
growing, from 10 years ago to now, the type of films we're doing,
Yeah.
the scale of it.
yeah, the budgets of it as
with
well.
technology as well coming
Yeah,
into
so
play,
it's-
right?
Absolutely.
Exactly,
absolutely.
and that is
Yeah.
a big cost. post-production is a big cost.
Yeah. So how can we, I mean, start from starting our own initiatives? I mean, how can we like have a, you know, an environment or a film climate that, you know, has enough funds for all these ambitious Singaporean filmmakers and producers who need to go out and get the money, right?
I mean,
Like what needs to be done?
because I've been through the commercial route,
Yeah.
as well as I've gotten money from the government. Yeah, so it's both sides, you know. So I think the government cannot support the industry indefinitely. As producers, we must be able to stand on our own.
Okay.
But they can give help, a leg up in terms of, you know, establishing the producers on a regional scale, which they are doing,
yes.
using the Southeast Asia Co-Production Fund
Yes.
and the Go Global Fund for Singapore films. And that puts producers in good limelight on the international stage.
Okay.
You can attract better partners, more money to come in to make Singapore films. So I think, you know, firstly is that. Then I think for in terms of commercial films, you know, like I mentioned just now, is, you know, you always think about times three.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, always, you know. So with like 1.2, 1.5, it's very hard to, you know, just to break even is even harder. So that's why don't scold me. You know, I need sponsorships in commercial films, you know, the product placements. It really helps a lot because the cinema doesn't take away from the sponsorship money. It goes directly into the production itself. Yeah. So cinema, let's say your box office is 1 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the industry norm. It's about, they will take 50, 55%. So the producers are left with 45%. And then you still have promotion and marketing, right?
Yeah.
So really, you get back about 1/3. Yeah. So if to help with the Singapore film industry, I think that, I mean, the government, I understand, is like a free market and everything. But other governments have sort of like measures, you know, in place to help and nurture before international comes in. But I think we are past that stage, right? So we have to stand on our own. So I think, you know, Singapore films need to be lower in budget.
That's not fun to hear.
Yeah, really. To make, I mean, commercial films, I'm not talking
Right.
about art films,
Yeah.
really need to be lower budget. You are talking about 1,800,000 is doable. And maybe I can get funding from various sources as well. And maybe we can make money.
Yeah.
Break even at least. Break even will give the chance for the next film for
Film.
this same director. And then that will build their capability. We can't have like a situation, you know, 10 years, this is the golden era. And then the commercial directors are sort of like making one film, box office no good, that's it. They stop. The industry will not go forward. I mean, co-productions, there are various kinds of co-productions. Co-productions where me as a company, I invest in the project, but the story is Indonesian. Cast is Indonesian.
Right.
Main release is in Indonesia. Yeah. There are co-productions as a Singapore story.
Yeah.
Cast Singapore, main creative Singapore, foreign investments come in. So I think Susan is doing a terrific job, you know,
Yes.
trying to get, you know, investors come in to support Singapore film.
And I think building on the point is not, I suppose like we can talk about funding, but also it's about like building sustainability, you know, having an understanding that, you know, we make a film and it's meant for an audience and that like we have to consider, I think, sustainability of both, I think, our careers and also directors to make sure that we can keep doing the things we love and telling the stories that we want.
I think we have to have a long-term view in terms of, especially a creative industry. It's not like, you know, I manufacture something and then it goes out and then, you know, the
It's
returns.
a long runway.
Yeah,
But
it's
you see,
a long runway.
without the money, there is no creativity to be made, right? You know what I mean? And I think like you are the best people to sort of, Sen, you spearheaded like the Objectives Film Fund?
The incubator. So
The
we
incubator,
have some
yeah.
initiatives.
Can you tell us more about like the
yeah,
Momo
so,
grant and the...
It's a really small grant that we started, and we started
Still a
it
grant.
because at the time we saw so many filmmakers who made their film, and then like maybe they ran out of money, they have no idea of like how to do distribution, and we really started this grant for people to start thinking about like what do you do now after you make a film, and people think that, you know, the production is the main part of it, but it's, you know, when you finish making a film, that's only really half the job done. You have to do all of the marketing, all of the distribution, making sure it gets out to audience and, you know, sales internationally, domestic box office. And those are like considerations that are very much integral to making a film that I think people don't start thinking about until it's too late. And so we really started the ground for people to have the discipline to think about it, like even making a short film. Where do you want this film to go? And that's really the question that we want to instill in people when we started that.
And who's eligible as long as you're a new filmmaker?
Southeast Asian, never made a feature film before. Not for students. So like after they
Okay,
graduate.
okay.
It's a very good system in place to actually educate the filmmakers, because it is to really just to tell them that when you make a film, you birth a product and it needs to travel, but a lot of filmmakers will just stop at the birth. What's next?
Right. Because the whole vision
Yeah.
is, this is just the story that I have to
Yeah.
tell, not
Because-
realizing like, okay, but where's that story going to go? Do you even
because
know?
that ties into what Leonard has mentioned,
Yes.
whereby you need to actually have that runway long enough for planes to take off, right? Which is also implied in, yes, we all say money is important. It is,
Of course.
but how you use the money and how you still bring it back to what I always say, it's about production quality.
I mean, like the medium we work with is interesting. It's in this intersection of like art and
Yeah.
commerce. It is, I think, like it is a medium that cannot exist without audience. And if you want to make
Correct.
it for yourself,
Right,
then
yeah.
then don't make
Yeah.
something like that.
Like at the end of the day,
Yeah.
Not a
right?
hobby.
They are the bosses, of the film. If you really think about it, right? It's the audience. No one watches your film.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
voices really.
Right? Yeah, they-
Everything is
I
based on that.
tell filmmakers that I say, who is the ultimate client?
Exactly.
The ultimate client
audience.
is the audience. It is not me as your producer. It is not our so-called investor, which is the executive producer. It is the audience. And we have that luxury because it's not like a commission work. It's not like television commercials. But if we put our heart together and work as a team, make it for production value, when the audience loves it, we win already.
Correct.
We have that number.
This applies for both commercial and art films.
Yeah,
Yes.
totally.
Because art films, you must reach your audience as well. You must, for all the festivals,
Yes.
you must reach them as well. Yeah, so it applies both ways. Yeah.
Emma, you've been executive producer, right, for like Inside Crime Scene.
Documentary based, yes.
Yeah, that's documentary based. I have like a two-pronged question. One is that has to be so different from just fictional, because you've got like now like you've got family members maybe you have to talk to, you've got permits, there's law enforcement. And then I also want to ask you, the second is, like funding for it, like being executive producer. I mean, from what I understood is you're the person that's going to get the money for it.
Inside Crime Scene is in its second season.
And congrats on the
Nice,
awards.
awesome.
So yes, we've won quite a few, I think 8 or 9
Yeah,
awards for it
yeah.
internationally. And what's surprising is that we started winning the awards, international awards first, before we started winning the local awards. In
Well
fact,
done.
yeah,
Well done.
yes,
Oh.
yes.
Okay, I'm just going to say it out loud now. Since it sounds about right. Okay,
Yeah.
you win international awards
Yes,
first.
yes, and then we
And
we
then
were recognized. Well,
you get
a lot of
recognized.
Unspoken to that, we will talk about it later. But yeah, yes, we did very, very well for season 1, which was a complete surprise to us because we had so little time to put it together. Inside Crime Scene is a series about true crimes in Singapore, but very forensic focus. I'm not going to say, which government agency, but we didn't get 100% support for wanting to do this. This is, by the way, it's a MediaCorp commission project. So funding was not an issue, but funding for documentary, as we all know as producers, is essentially a lot lower. It's very, very low.
What is low? Can you give like the person who doesn't know, like
It's very hard to say because
Yeah.
it's really about the budgets and how we
Right,
pitch,
right, yeah.
and how we somewhat
Okay, so it's low.
submit it to be. But I think we are looking at least half a drama series budget
Okay.
per episode.
And I'm thinking it should actually you actually should need more.
Well, no, we work on a very much more leaner crew.
Okay.
That you take into consideration that when you do documentaries, you don't always work with cast. We don't have cast as well, so we don't have the actors to pay. But of course, when we do our reenactments, but then we don't need the experienced actors to come in, and that is a significant part of the budget. Yeah, but Inside Crime Scene was very difficult because in season 1, we really had nothing. We had 6 months to deliver it on air. We had to go and speak to the forensic team at NUS, who I love like so much for giving us 100% support. Professor Stella Tan and her team and all her lecturers, they came in and said, okay, just send us all the cases and we'll analyze it together. But people were skeptical. They were very, very skeptical of us and what we were trying to do. And they were saying, oh, no, we're not going to get involved in this. This is too sensitive for us. Yeah, but
I feel it's so important. I mean, I watched like 2 episodes that, I grew up with those, like the Scullys.
the Scully murders in season 2, and so when we and so when we finally aired it and Netflix came and said, you know what, we love it, we're taking it.
Well
You
done.
know, it was very surreal to us because to us is we felt like we could have done a better job because, and this is a problem with producers. We always think when our work goes out there, like, what could we have done better? How can we do it better the next time? And we're fortunate that we were given that opportunity to do it when they came to us and said, we want season 2. And from what I hear, it was one of the fastest commission project for a second season. In less than 6 months, we were approached to do a second season. But it's also because our viewerships was extremely high. But we also know this is the crime time,
Exactly. It's
that's-
all over Netflix.
It's all over Netflix. It's, all these series, when you watch back and you see top 10 series, top 10 films, it's always true crime stories.
Yeah.
Beach House, they do amazing docudramas, on true crime cases. Yeah, so when they came in and said, okay, season 2, and that was like, oh, great, this is now the time to make up for what we felt we could have done better. And this time round, because we had done season 1 and everyone had seen, the recognition we were getting out, and they said, you know what, we're here to support you. So season 2 became a lot easier to produce. But the easy to produce was also, then a lot of people started saying, I want to have a voice to it. I want to. Previously,
Too many
in season 1, it was like,
Normal.
nobody's like, okay, we're not even going to touch this, right? It's such a sensitive thing.
And then the moment it works, everyone wants to get involved.
Everyone does want to be a part of it, I think it's also because they watch it and they say, hey, this is something that is, we all grow up watching a certain type of crimes series on reflection of true crimes in Singapore. And this was done very differently because it's so forensic driven. That everyone said, people like HSA came and said, we'll give you 100% support. What do you need from us? All our doctors, everyone, all our lab, research is all for you. As producers, right, it's very good to be supported.
Yeah, it's empowering.
It's very, very empowering because then we know, okay, you know what, then we can keep pushing. We can push and see how far we can go with this. But of course, coming back to the hard part of it, with every case that we chose to do, we always kept in mind that we need to inform the family.
Oh, of course.
So we actually went in search of the family. We had no police files to look at. We didn't know where to start, but we started by going back to the actual crime scene and speaking to, and I have a great research team who I was working very closely with. Go back to the main crime scene and research and figure out how do we get in touch with the family. And only when the family says okay, we're here to support you, or okay, we're okay with doing this, that we decided to move ahead. But along the way, there was also a lot of miscommunication where one family member said it was okay, and then another family member is like,
Of course.
no, I never gave you permission. If anything happens to my family, you are responsible. We had moments like that. We had moments where we were threatened. I mean, it's very different. This is not the usual.
And this is also a side of the job I feel that we never get to see, right? Again, going back to a
Because-
producer's job, right? The people that
nobody
threaten
will
you,
see
the
this.
people that yell at you,
Yeah.
the people that, are like, oh, I'm coming for you. I mean, I don't know, right?
Yeah, they said
There must
if
be-
my son kills himself, it's on you, okay? And I still remember sitting there outside, a studio thinking to myself, okay, what am I supposed to do with this
Right.
information, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of patience, but this is very different from a TV producer. This is very different from a film producer.
Right.
This comes from documentary,
Would you
producing
say-
a documentary of sensitive nature where people are involved.
Yeah.
Where people are involved, and then we always have to remember, and what I always tell my team, which is we produce and then we move away from the project, but the people that are involved emotionally to what the stories that we tell will have to live with the pain for the rest of their lives.
Correct.
So they have to come first. They have to be the priority. Just to share a little bit,
Yeah.
I had a case where the husband was the first to reach out and said, like, no, you can't do this. I will not let you report on my wife's murder. No, I will not. Although we were told earlier on that we could from another family member. So we had gone ahead with the production. And then the husband had heard about it and then said, no, you can't. And my research team, they were all panicking because we were already rolling the cameras and we could not change the case in time.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, as a producer, we are responsible for our production. Whether it's budget, whether it's welfare, or whether it's distribution, we are responsible. So I said, it's not your responsibility, it's my responsibility. I will talk to the husband. So at that day itself, 2 hours later, I was sitting in his living room, having him yell and threaten me. 2 hours later, he said, okay, fine, go and do your series. 2 weeks later, the brother calls me to threaten me to say that his son was the boy that the auntie had brought home, and if it wasn't for his son, the auntie would still be alive.
Oh no.
And therefore, by showing this, he is and he's been going for counseling for a very, very long time. So he said, if my son chooses to kill himself, it's all on you. That conversation took me 2 months. But with the promise that when we finally finish our post, they will be the first to sit in to watch it.
Okay.
Which I have to say, I took the finished product, I went to the house, my directors all said to me like, hey, can we come with you?
Yeah.
So I had one director for every episode, and I said no, because when we storytell and we tell stories like this, we have to come from a place of sensitivity and sincerity,
More important.
which is very important.
Yeah.
If we bring a whole crew into, it's already a very, very volatile situation.
And it seems very business also, right?
Which is very true. So I
Yeah.
chose to go in on my own, surrounding myself with 6 family members, and watch their auntie and wife and mother stabbed on the screen for 46 minutes.
Yeah.
It was the longest 46 minutes of my life. I promise you that.
Yeah.
One of my most difficult moments as a producer,
Yeah.
as an EP for the series as well. There were a lot of tears cried. And that's why I feel it's very important for us to be very responsible in what we do.
Yeah.
And after which I answered whatever question that needed to be answered. And yeah, but I left the house with 100% support,
Yeah.
love, acceptance,
Yeah.
and blessings to air the series.
Yeah.
I remember the reason why I could do that, right, was because of the victim's son.
You have a son?
Yes, but victim's son, no, he was the one that stood up in the room and said, and this is his mother that he had lost, right? And he said, and he actually saw her. They had discovered the body, him and the father, and he said to everyone in the room, and he said, I was young then. I don't remember much about it anymore, and I want to move on, and I want every one of you to move on as well.
Wow. So that was like almost a healing process.
It was a healing process.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like with the, you talk about adaptation. Yes, I've done
Yes.
tons of adaptation,
Yeah.
especially for the last 2 years. A lot of projects that I'm very proud to be, a part of. Alienated, Kisses from Death, Teenage Textbook. I'm just so fortunate to be able to work on those adaptations. But Inside Crime Scene has a very, very special place in my heart because it's a reminder to me with all the other projects that I do why I do it, for
Yeah.
the passion
Yes.
to tell the stories, but to tell the stories responsibly, you
Right.
know, and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thanks for sharing that with us. You know, that was like a very powerful, especially coming from like the producer's point of view. And I feel like I want to ask also, as producers, right, do you go out and search for the stories that you want to tell, like in Singapore especially, or do they come to you, or is it like a mixture of both? Because clearly, like there is a lot of, okay, this means something to me, this story means something to me. Sometimes, fiction, non-fictional, of course, oh my goodness, real humans, real events, right? But also like the fictional stuff, right? Like the things that like sing to your heart, like really, oh, this, I have to be part of this, I want to produce this. What is that like? Like, do you have the option of being selective, or
I think it's a mixture of like the stories that we are interested in, the talents that we're interested in that bring stories to us, or maybe books that we're interested in. And I think that I think as producers and in this stage of our industry, I think we have the ability to be selective in what we want to tell,
Yes.
what we want to highlight, the people that we want to champion, the stories that we want to back up. And I think that as producers, I think we have the power to decide that.
And I want to speak about, people you want to champion. Sen, I know that, you want to champion the underrepresented, right? And I love also with Inside Crime Scene is all the stories that we don't know about that come to light. And we're like, oh, this happened in my country, these people, and blah, blah, blah. And I think for yours, it's like you want more diversity for the queer community.
Yeah, I think
Maybe
like in
just
terms
tell
of
us-
filmmakers I work with, I mean, I'm always attracted to like great talents who have
Yeah.
interesting stories to tell. But I think of late, and some of it is really subconscious that I work with. I think a lot more female directors. I work with people who tell stories of like I think like from less highlighted communities. And I think I of the last 2 years, I'm also working on more queer stories. And some of it is subconscious, and it's just what you're attracted to
Right,
sometimes.
right, yeah.
But other times, I think depending on the stories that come through, yeah, I would rather do that than something that we've seen
I
times.
I really do understand that, right? Because like my first short film was about colorism, which really is just my life story, right? Having darker skin. I'm going to come to the most sensitive question of this session already. Okay, having darker skin and being a minority, right? Your films are great. As a Singaporean, I enjoy them, right? But I do have to ask, why is there a lack of darker skin talents in actors in lead roles or in a whole cast? And I don't want to really talk about race. I really just want to make it about colorism. Why aren't we seeing browner, people take the lead? Is that something that, you feel that your hands are tied because this is Singapore, majority of the population is Chinese. So even if you did want to say something about it, you're in a difficult position. Is there something moving behind the scenes that maybe I might be surprised the next film it's like, oh wow, there's a Eurasian girl and an Indian man and a Malay. I don't know. I really do want to know. This is like a personal question, but it's just that I never had the luxury of watching people that looked like me in a lot of local productions. Even amongst filmmakers, I don't really see filmmakers in the spotlight that look like me. You know what I mean? So who wants to, or do we go around the table?
I think I can. Coming out of 3 TV series last year.
Yeah, yeah.
And being very involved in the casting process of it. Actually, they have asked, our local broadcasters have asked to have more inclusion of
Yeah.
the minority races.
Right.
They are very to the point where they say, if you don't find, if we cannot, you definitely have to have a minority race, whether it's, and most of the time is within the lead role or the supporting lead role. And there will be times where it's so difficult because the minority races, right, is not as, the talent pool is so limited.
But do you think that's a chicken, which came first, the chicken or the egg situation? Because if you were not ever really cast previously, then there's so many of you that didn't have that whole career path to be
But I
A-list.
think now it's more so that if they say to me, like, we need to have a balance in
Right.
terms of the races within the cast.
Yeah.
And if you cannot confirm a balance, we will not confirm the full cast.
Okay.
And this would include the majority race as well.
Mm.
It's of very big importance to them now that there is a representation.
A representation. Okay.
Yes, correct. So my biggest issue whenever I am casting or I'm working with the casting director, right, is the fact that when it comes to the minority, right, it's like, you know, the Eurasians, especially the Eurasians, you know, it's so hard to find. You know, there is this whole, I want this person to look like this. So hard to find, so limited. The pool is so limited. So what happens? We keep going back to the same talents over and over and over again. Then we get criticized as producers. I get people sending me hate mail like, you keep using the same actors over and over again.
That
Suddenly
has to
about
be.
sponsorship.
Yeah, same thing,
Yeah.
Sounds
right?
familiar.
That's what I mean. So your
Correct.
clients are
Sponsorship.
probably also like your hands are tied, right? Because they probably want a certain type, a certain.
No, it's not that. It's that we get hate mails, we get criticized for, you know, sponsorships, for, you know, for using the same people over and over again. But the fact of the matter is, if we had more options, that would be great. It's not that we don't want to, but it's we don't have enough. But then, you know, the thing
think-
is that
Yeah.
our industry is also very small.
Yeah.
And with small becomes restrictive. It becomes availability is also limited.
Yeah.
Very, very limited.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't think it's got anything to do with the fact that the minorities are not given opportunities as lead roles. I think now is the time
Okay,
where
so it's evolving.
it's evolved.
Okay.
I can't say much about what's happened in the last 10 years
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
only just come back the last
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah.
But since I've come back, there has been a lot of focus in including the minorities as part of the main cast.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So for you, what do you feel like for the rest of you?
I think it's really about whether or not, as a producer, you are market driven, or do you want to have that responsibility of trying something new.
Right.
I mean, perhaps from my own experiences and a bit of what Emma has mentioned also, it's really about finding that combination spark,
Right.
where you have that confidence to say, okay, you know, I'm going to do something that is going to be pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
I've encountered pitching sessions whereby it's, you know, also either multiracial or discussing about an unknown culture or a very rare culture in Singapore, and being pitched a project like that. As a producer, you must ask, okay, you know, is this going to be something that is spark that I can put all my eggs in that basket? Or do you actually still need to consider whether the market is ready for a project like this? So I think my short answer is sometimes it's really about driving with the market and establishing yourself first before you can actually venture to something that is a bit more edgy.
Okay.
We faced the same problem with Circle Line. So for Circle Line, the initial kind of like iterations were that, oh, you know, it's a Singapore film. So guess what? You know, Singapore film, multiracial. But through several iterations, you know, the question that we always had ourselves was, okay, you know, if we make it too rojak, how will it be represented overseas? You know, and our first two key markets was North America and also China, right? And our considerations, again, you know, very producer, our considerations is, okay, North America is very well known to receive monster movies, right? But if we bring in the aspect of having all the races represented, you know, the North American sales agent will say, oh, you know, why don't you put in an American? You know, maybe that will help sales. So it suddenly became this,
Chinese cast.
you know, everything was just a melting pot for the sake of being a melting pot.
Right.
Then another iteration was, okay, you know, the companies and the stakeholders are all pretty much pro-Mandarin market.
Okay.
Right? So it's okay, let's see whether we can do it as a Chinese language, Chinese region facing film. So immediately when that lens shifted, you know, immediately is, oh, we don't need to really represent, and that was also the point where we also decided, okay, as Circle Line, we don't want to say that it's, imprinted Singapore, right? It's just a monster movie,
Yeah.
right? So then that kind of changed the so-called racial representation.
Right.
But that was also something that we had to bear full responsibility, because when we made it too Chinese, and the Singaporean Chinese language is also a big question mark,
Yeah.
right, in terms of the delivery, the markets didn't really embrace it also.
Okay.
So again, we were neither here nor there, but we had to bear that brunt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of layers of I guess decision making on the producing side to really bring on board a project that can represent.
Yeah.
And then I faced this. I just had this conversation like 2 days ago. So because how do we bring ourselves out of the world so that people will still recognize us?
That's a great question.
Most of the time, it is to go to the mainstream,
Yeah.
which sadly in Singapore, it's, you still have to do it as a singular race representation. But that's not to say that there weren't Indian or Malay films that they were very successful.
Yeah.
They have been made. Perhaps the question mark would be actually down to, again, ourselves and also the market that we're aiming for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of like questions and a lot of information that was given like during this session, right, gives us a lot to think about, but it also gives us a lot of hope in terms of, and then of course, now we see producers as, who they are and what they bring to the table and everything that you all have to suffer through and so I really do want to thank all of you. Does anyone want to tell us like what we can look out for like very quickly before we wrap? In terms of the work that you're doing, you have so much. So, just a quick shout out.
I think I have 2 films coming out this year. One is a Vietnamese sort of like horror comedy that will come out later this year, and that's a fun one from a first-time female filmmaker. And then I have a queer coming of age film that will be out later this year as well, from a Filipino director.
Okay. Are you
very
allowed to say the film's names?
Yeah. So the first one is called Don't Cry Butterfly, and then the second one is Some Nights I Feel Like Walking.
Okay. So we got to look out for that. What about you, Leonard?
Well, I'm executive producer for a Thai zombie horror film.
Awesome.
World War
Ask
II.
John. No, I trust you. John's got the playbook.
Yes,
Yeah.
Nongku, yes, A. Awad. So it's premiering in Thailand, 1st of August.
Okay.
So hopefully it does well.
What's it called again?
It's called Operation Undead. And if it does well, hopefully we can show it in Singapore, Malaysia, the other region. But main market is still Thailand first.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's in the pipeline. Then hopefully, there's 2 Indonesian, 1 Cambodian. I don't have anything on Singapore though.
So we got to move on
So
to
so it's the
Proven.
Oh
it's the year that after 10 years I don't have a Chinese New Year movie.
That's a good thing. That shows
Yeah,
variety.
Or
Exactly.
something
Maybe
to think
it's time to
about.
move on.
Yeah.
Progression. Yeah.
You, Emma?
That's-
I think coming back after 10 years ago, when I came back, I was like really, really scared, right? But I think I'm a little bit more brave right now. So having to, we are all very, very different producers, and
Yeah.
I've been very focused on TV producing.
Yes.
I have very little experience with, film producing, basically. But moving forward, I also want to, with Inside Crime Scene, where I could tell the stories that I wanted to tell. They all had some social element to it. I want to move forward and continue doing that. So I'm currently looking to work outside of Singapore. Like I'm talking to people outside of Singapore. So that, yeah. So currently now I'm looking at, I'm working with a Thai production company
Okay.
to create a story to tell, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I'm also speaking to India at the moment,
Nice.
because I was just so inspired when I went to India. So I wrote a story. So I
Okay.
pitched it to them and they said, oh, it sounds like a fun thing to do.
We look forward
Yeah.
to it. We look forward to it.
So
And
hopefully, I don't know if it will
what?
get made,
Fingers
but
crossed. Fingers crossed, right? We'll all hope together. Finally, the OG.
OG is Ocean Garments. I'm doing more educating, so I'm trying to put some resources into developing a kind of like a proper producing training track lah. But on the project side, after Circle Line, I'm taking a bit of a break. But I guess on the cards, I like to maybe test water for something that's again out of this world. So maybe I'm looking for something more on the sci-fi kind of thing. But I'm going to take my time because it's going to be a big project again. But yeah, right now I'm more interested to train producers lah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I might come to you for training, by the way.
he trained me.
Can we all
Leonard's
cheer?
very kind.
Thank you
So
all so
mental.
much. Can we
Oh,
all
thank you.
cheers? This was like a masterclass for everyone who's going to end up watching it.
Oh, thank you. I have.
So thank you all, the producers,
you,
the
Cassandra.
esteemed
Oh, thank you.
producers.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Hua
Hang on what?
Hang on what? Must what?
what?
Must
No,
what?
oh, my God.
No, hang on what?
Hang on.